then 2 years later, after he had gotten back and remembered the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he was released. So it reminded me of myself. It's like, man, why am I asking somebody else for help when I should be asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help? Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Ismael and in 2007 I was convicted of theft of a firearm and unlawful possession of a firearm and was given a term confinement of 450 months, which equates to 37 and a half years. Now, throughout my years and early on in prison, I got involved with the prison politics, and it wasn't a good road to go down. I didn't realize what I got myself into, and what made me get out of it was when I was in the hole the last time, and I got on the phone with my mom and was talking to her, and I called her and told her where I was at, and she said, well, why are you always in the hole? Why can't you just stay out of trouble so you can come home sooner to me? And it didn't really dawn on me that maybe my mom knew something, about behaving. I looked at my term as 37 and a half years. I got to spend my life in here. I mean, why should I care, right? I mean, early on, it doesn't matter. It's my life now. I have to be around these hardcore criminals. So after I got off the phone, it dawned on me that I need to start doing what my mom, was telling me to do. She would always tell me, you need to pray, you need to read the Qur'an. So I ended up getting a noble Qur'an, and I started reading it. And when I was laying there and I was reading it, and I went to the story about Yusuf when he got in prison, and I started reading, and the story, the part that made me cry was that when he got arrested, he had told his companion, or the person that was locked up with him in there, that to remind the king of him in there. And then 2 years later, after he had gotten back and remembered the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he was released. So it reminded me of myself. It's like, man, why am I asking somebody else for help when I should be asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help? So I ended up, getting back into the deen, starting learning the deen, doing the best that I can. So when I got out, I stepped away from the prison politics, and I had to suffer the consequences. I had to fight my way back out, and that's how it was in prison. And then after that, I was able to walk on my own, and I ended up going to Clown Bay Correction Center. Now, I met a lot of good brothers in there, Musa was one of them, Assad was another one, and Iyad, three good brothers of mine. When they ended up leaving, Abdul Wali ended up showing up, and he became the imam. And when we were having our meeting discussing the community's needs and affairs, I had asked him if he knew a lawyer, because he asked me about my situation too, and he's like, man, that's not cool what they did. He's like, it's not fair. And I asked him, so do you know a lawyer that possibly could help? And he pulled out his phone book and got the information to a guy named John Zuloff. So I got his information, I wrote him a letter outlining my story, telling him about my sentence. And he had written back, and he said that he's been to Cambodia because my background is, I told him in the letter that my background was Cambodian Cham, that, my family were refugees, and I'm the second generation from them. So he read it, he said that, man, it's not fair what they did to you, and he quoted me $1,000 to look over my documents that I had sent him, my JNS, my sentencing transcripts. And then I had to write him a letter back, and I said, man, thank you for your time. I really appreciate you even considering this. However, I don't have the funds to pay you. I only make 42 cents an hour. It equates up to maybe $500 a month, and it'd take me 2 years just to even get you the money, so you can look at it. Thank you for your time anyways, and I just left it at that. And that was in about 2012. In 2015, I ended up getting transferred to Stafford Creek Correction Center, and I was doing what I was doing, meeting brothers, learning about Islam as best as I can, doing my prayers. And in 2017, I had received legal mail, and when I went to go pick it up, it said Seattle Clemency Project, and I didn't even know who it was, but I recognized the name John Zuloff. So I had an appointment to go see him, attorney interview, and when I went to go see him, he basically said that, man, he's like, I remember, I started this organization called the Seattle Clemency Project, and what we do is we find individuals who deserve a second chance. I remember your case because it just wasn't fair what they did to you in your sentence. It just doesn't make sense. 37.5 years for a property crime, a nonviolent property crime. I mean, it wasn't even murder. And he said, I believe that you're a perfect candidate for clemency. And he said, and then after the interview, he said, unfortunately, he can't represent me, but he would find me somebody that could. He said it would take about a couple months. And then we parted ways. In a couple weeks, I ended up getting legal mail again, and it was from a law firm called Perkins Coie. And the legal names that were on it, the lawyers' names was Emily Bouchard and Tom Hillier. Tom Hillier is the senior counsel, and Emily was the secondary. They sent me a contract to sign, with stipulations of how they can represent me, that they're doing it pro bono, and I didn't have to pay anything, that they were going to represent me for this thing called clemency. Now, clemency is a process that one can go and ask the governor or the board members, to give them leniency, maybe have a sentence reduction or a commutation of the sentence, or dismiss it. And they do a recommendation based off of an interview on you, on your criminal history, your record in prison, and your extraordinary circumstances. So they got on board, they started representing me and started prepping me up, and we ended up going to a clemency hearing in December 14th of 2018. Now, the clemency hearing was going good in the beginning. I was sitting in the office on my end while all my family members had shown up for this hearing, and they were big supporters of my family. Now, when the lawyers started speaking, Almeida chimed in and he started talking about infractions. Now, this individual, one of the board members, he is a chief of police or a retired chief of police, so he's all about rules. Now, he had seen my infraction history report, and he had chimed in on it and said that rules are rules, and he's breaking the rules. I don't know him as a person, but on paper it looked like he's breaking the rules. So as soon as that happened, I looked at my counsel that had brought me in there to be Skyped in. I said, man, it's going south. It's not going good. And he's like, what do you mean? I think it's going great. It's early. I was like, no, it's going bad. I've watched enough clemency hearings to know when it's going to go south. Because if he's chiming in on it already about infractions, it's going to go south. So we sat through there, and by the time I was able to speak and I had given my testimony, afterwards the board members, they would speak. So Almeida spoke, Jennifer Rancourt had spoken, because we were talking about what my debt to society has been paid. This is a letter. My lawyers were able to obtain a letter of support from the judge and the prosecutor in my petition. And the victim didn't even oppose it. So even though I had all that in play with me, it still wasn't enough. They just saw that I had minor infractions. They thought I had too many infractions right now. So they recommended to the council to have me withdraw the petition and come back in a year or two with a cleaner record and pay off the restitution. So they called me on the phone. They wanted to know my decision. I said, let's just withdraw. We'll do what they asked for to show them that, I can do what they're asking for. We withdraw the petition, we go home. Now, that next day was Salatul Jum'ah, and I ended up going to Jum'ah to pray, and an individual by the name of Blaze showed up, and he's not even a Muslim, but he showed up, and he said, man, that's not fair what they did to you. Let's go this route. And he put me in touch with this lady named Carla Lee, which is a deputy prosecuting attorney in King County. Now, she has this thing called the conviction integrity process. And what this does is that they review certain cases to see if there was something constitutionally wrong that they can fix, or if, or if there's just like not enough evidence where somebody wrongfully got convicted, they would overturn these cases and make it more justice reform. So I had met with her and I had spoken to her and I showed her the letters that I got. You know, I went through clemency and this is what happened to me. These are the letters. And she looked at me and she's like, look, you got action. Like, you know, look, you have action with your situation. So we started talking more about it. I called her on the phone. She discussed it. If I was in King County, I would have been brought back and resentenced already, according to their program. However, unfortunately, I come out of Thurston County, and they don't have that program there. So my lawyer Emily, after the hearing, she went on to maternity leave because she had given birth to a daughter, Ivy, and when she came back in April, I believe, I had told her that, look, there's this avenue that I want to take. It's, you know, and I just want you to hear me out. So she ended up listening to my ideas, like, look, there's a way that I can get out faster and it doesn't have to be through clemency. And she's like, well, what is that? I said, they got this program called the Conviction Integrity Process in King County, but they don't have it in Thurston County. And I explained to her exactly in full detail what it was. And I said, if she needs to know more, then contact this lady, Carla Lee. So Emily does contact Carla Lee. And Carla Lee explains to her the whole process of what they typically do and template motions as to what they file to get it done. So Emily's like, okay, cool, good. And but our prosecutor doesn't know anything about it. So we were able to try to get their prosecutor, Dan Sandisberg, and John Thunheim at the Prosecutors Association meeting to meet up. And that's the date we were waiting for to try to push it a little forward. Well, that didn't go through either because they just didn't cross each other, but they were both there. So we had to wait a little more. And then Emily finally just reached out to John Thunheim and explained to him, say, hey, there's this thing we want to do. They do this thing in King County, and she broke it all down to him too, and he said it's very interesting. He says, let me think about it. So we got our foot in the door. Now, once he was interested in it, he said, well, there's no jurisdictional hook for me to bring him back. And that's when I had my ace in the hole, was I had a miscalculation of offender score. So what the plan was, well, let me go back just a little bit. Now, in 2017, also, when I gone up before clemency, a case law came out, State versus McFarland, they said that you can actually run my charges concurrently, but it wasn't retroactive, so I was time barred. I couldn't file on it. Now, because I had this jurisdictional hook of being able to use the miscalculation of offender score, that means my JNS is invalid on its face. So I'm able to bring it back and get it corrected. So moving back up forward to John Thunheim looking for a jurisdictional hook, I had sent the motion to my lawyer, said this is the argument right here, this is your jurisdictional hook. You got to tag on one more point for me to be on because I was on community supervision. Now it brings my range up higher, but it also allows the sentencing court's discretion to resentence me proper, as this case law says that you can do. And the prosecutor said it's a good idea, but he would only agree to it if community supervision could be opposed. So, because my charges typically don't carry community supervision. I did the research, I found under the exceptional sentence provision that as long as the prosecutor and I stipulate to community supervision, the judge can impose it. We sent that off to him. He found the information, he agreed to it, and we were waiting for a resentencing date, and it didn't get established until February 10th. That was the date. So I came back, got resentenced on February 10th, which was 4 days ago, and they overturned my case. They overturned it. They gave me credit for time served, and at the end of the night I was out, and now I'm home.